Are you ready to go, Joanne? Do I turn off the audio? Okay, is it now? Sorry, everybody, we just have technical problem. Okay, I think we resolved it. Good afternoon and welcome to the Committee of Adjustment hearings for Suburban Panel number 2. We're a City of Ottawa quasi-judicial tribunal that holds public hearings to consider Planning Act applications, including minor variances and to the zoning requirements and consent to sever. Our hearings are now in person at Ben Franklin Place, 101 Center Point Drive. We also enable remote participation by video conferencing for our registered speakers. We are live streaming on YouTube and the video will be archived and available for future viewing by the public. My name is Fabian Poulin. I'll be chairing today's hearings and you can address me by my name as chair. And with me are my fellow panel members, Jay Baltz, George Barrett, Heather McLean, and Julianne Wright. The procedure for the hearings will be as follows. Listed on the agenda and appearing on screen from time to time are the applications we'll hear today. For the sake of efficiency, I may deal with agenda items in a different order. Panel members have reviewed the planning reports and any submissions in support or in opposition to each of the applications. Today, we'll hear any oral submissions relating to the applications. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign posting on the property in question before the hearing. They also had to confirm in writing that they did so, or they'll need to swear or affirm an oath today that they've fulfilled the sign posting requirements. Otherwise, we have to adjourn or postpone the hearing. Have you received all statutory declarations?
Yes.
Thank you very much. The panel may ask for a brief presentation or on an application followed by questions for the applicant and city planning staff. We will then hear from members of the public who have registered to speak, and we may also have questions for them. Finally, the applicant who has the burden of proof will have an opportunity to make final comments. Please address your comments to me as the chair, starting first with your name and spelling it if necessary, and your municipal address for the record. All presentations are limited to 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at my discretion. At the end of the hearing, the panel will reserve all our decisions, and which means that it won't be delivered today, but you'll receive them within 10 days. The Committee of Adjustment will send the official written decision and reasons for it to all parties, participants, and anyone who has requested a copy. Does anyone have a question about the procedure we will be following today? Anyone online? Okay, we have several applications to hear today, but first need to deal with some preliminary procedural matters. Are there any declarations of interest by any of the panel members present? No declarations of interest. We need to confirm the minutes of 2 of our last meetings. Meeting of August the 1st. All those in favor of affirming the minutes of August the 1st, please raise your hands. Yeah, the minutes of August 1st are approved. And minutes of August 15, are all the members in agreement that we should proceed with the minutes of August 15? Yes, we will confirm those minutes as well. So we have several applications before us. First, we'll deal with the unopposed applications. And
Mr. Chair,
yes.
First you should deal with the adjournment requests.
Pardon me?
The adjournment requests.
Oh, thank you. So we'll deal with the adjournment request first. So we'll deal with number 4 first. It should be a simpler one than the other two. So I'm looking for Mr. Basinga, 1100 Orleans. Please join us down here, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, thank you.
I understand you'd like to adjourn your application today,
Yes,
and you'd like to have it adjourned sine die.
yes.
So I'd like to now ask the panel members if they would like to adjourn this application sine die. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is adjourned, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Now on to application number 1, having to do with 884 Byron. Mr. Segreto, are you available? Are you online, Mr. Segreto? Is he online, Mr. Houston? Thank you. Hello, Mr. Segreto.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members.
You can lower your hand if you want. So we understand that you'd like to have, the planning department would like to adjourn this application to address some concerns from the forestry department. Would planning like to describe their concerns and the reason for the adjournment?
Sorry, it took a few minutes. Yes, I can confirm we would request an adjournment today to allow more time to address tree-related concerns with the severance.
Can you please tell us your name?
Oh, sorry, Nancy Young. I'm the forester on the file.
Okay. Do you have any comments, panel? Mr. Baltz?
Yes, I understand that I should say your camera isn't on, so for the YouTube, you might want to, and for the, yeah. So the concern is about tree number 5 on the tree information report, which is a black walnut on near the property line in the rear, correct? Side property line in the towards the rear. Can you describe the issues and what you have been discussing with the applicant towards reaching an agreement to preserve that tree?
Yes, thank you for the question. So yes, this is a significant tree. It is a black walnut. It's got 3 stems and is very large. It's on private property, but very close to the shared property line. So several neighbors are very much impacted by loss of this tree. We have had discussions since May when the original building permit application was made. And we did raise concerns at that time with this tree and asked for changes to be made to the plan, or at least an assessment to be made of what options there could be to rearrange things. Not so much the building itself, the building footprint, but the other kind of amenity structures and parking and that kind of thing.
So I don't want to get into the merits of the application. I just want to talk about the adjournment request. What are you going to need from the applicant to move forward? What does he not have today that you need to go forward next time, whenever it happens to be?
Okay, so we need either revised plans showing modifications to anything within the critical root zone of that tree, or we need some kind of assessment showing that they've looked at options and making a decision that way. We're not saying 100% that this tree must be retained, but we need to see that all options have been looked at and considered and weighed by both the applicant and the arborist. So we just need a set of plans to look at.
Okay, how much time do you think you need to review those plans once you receive them?
I don't think my review will take very long. I could do that in a week or 2 weeks, but probably revision of the plan and the assessment would probably take some time.
Okay. Any questions, Ms. McLean? No? Any questions, Ms. Wright? No. Mr. Barrett?
Is just to confirm, the applicant's forestry analysis by Dendron said that the tree is, excuse me, is good to fair, but, and it was suggested that it would be removed. So are we just concerned about one tree, or are we concerned about the others as well?
That's a good question. Thank you. We are concerned about the overall impact to the trees as a whole. So technically all of the trees on site, but this is by far the most significant, the tree number 5. If we could retain that one only, we would be more than satisfied. The tree information report does say it is to be removed, but that's based on the plans provided and the amount of impact it would sustain. And I agree with that. With the impacts of this plan, I don't believe the tree would survive. So that's why we're asking for changes to be made.
Thank you. Mr. Bulch?
So there is a condition that's been proposed with respect to that tree, and that wouldn't be sufficient to going forward to take care of this, or if there has to be revised plans before you can assess that.
Thank you for the question. I think it's always better to deal with this outside of hearing kind of schedule. The condition is there as a backstop, and I mean, it can certainly help in the end, but I think an adjournment and more time would be better.
Thank you. Mr. Segreto, would you like to have this application adjourned today?
No, I don't. My client is in front of me here and he wishes to proceed with it. With all due respect to the tree reports that we have given and the tree replacement reports that we have given to the forestry and planning. My position is that at this point in time, we're dealing with a severance. We are not dealing with anything else other than a severance. And the severance with respect to the performance standards and to the bylaw, the zoning bylaw, we don't require anything. It is a severance that I'm asking you to deal with today, not the trees. The trees can be dealt with at time of building permit. I would like to address the fact that based on the fact that we already obtained a building permit for the side where this tree is in question, we have a building permit that was given to us. We are under construction right now. This building permit was revoked, and now we're building on the opposite side where construction is being taken place of. In addition to the trees in the front, we have tried everything that we can with respect to maintaining those trees due to the services, but there's a lack of space in front. With respect to the civil engineering, they have told us that there's no other way of doing this other than removing those trees in the front. They are all private trees. We have provided a replacement tree report, and I'm asking the committee to base their information that we have in front of you today, not to adjourn this file, because I really don't think there's any additional information that we can add to forestry or with Nancy Young at this point in time based on the severance. I would like the severance to go through. This is what I've been instructed to do through my client. Then if we have to negotiate and do something with the building to at least protect the tree in the back, my client is prepared possibly to reduce the back of the building, if at all possible, to save the root systems on the tree in the back. But again, I stress the fact that I'm asking for a severance, and I'd like the committee to vote on this severance today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Segreto. I'd like to ask the panel if they would like to continue as the applicant has requested to hear this application today. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application, all those opposed to hearing this application today?
No, I would like to.
Okay, Mr. Baltz? Okay, so unanimously, we will be hearing your application today. Thank you very much, Mr. Segreto. We'll deal with it as we move through the agenda in order.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, so we're moving on to application number 8, having to do with 1558 Baseline Road. Mr. Hume, are you available? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the panel.
Mr. Hume, Fed's requesting an adjournment of this application. Do you agree with that?
First of all, it's an adjournment because they're interpreting the zoning bylaw in a way that I don't necessarily agree with. So when you look at the zoning bylaw, the table in the zoning bylaw for an R2F zone specifies the lot area. In that same subzone, it says that when you're constructing or when you're moving forward with a semi-detached building, each portion of the lot must conform to the number outlined in the table. So we submitted a variance to the number in the table. Now the city's come back and said, no, that's not good enough. You need variances specific to each parts of or portions of the lot you propose to construct. This isn't a severance. We're not creating new lots. So we don't necessarily agree with their interpretation. But the problem is if we don't modify the variance in some way to accommodate the city, we're afraid that once we get to building code's going to say you need variances. You need not only to meet that number variance, but you need to specify the exact portions of each lot.
Mr.
So-
Hume, just a moment. We're just dealing with the adjournment request
I know,
today.
so I'm getting that. So
Okay,
we don't necessarily agree with the adjournment if the committee will consider amending the variance that was originally proposed. So to include, instead of including a minimum number, to replacing that minimum number with the two specific portions. If the committee's willing to do that, we'd like it heard today. If they're not, then we have no choice then but to agree with the adjournment.
I
So
don't think we should be amending the application on the floor here to hear it to satisfy. the
Sorry?
concern. Well, I don't think we should be amending the application right here to add those things that you're looking for. We're just dealing with the adjournment. If you'd
Yep.
if you'd like to have us hear the application, happy to do it.
but Mr. Chairman, if the committee's not going to amend the recommendation, the variance number one, then I'm not sure that it is in the interest of me to ask the committee to hear the application, because ultimately I will get bogged down at building code services. So if the committee is not prepared to amend that one variance, then I would suggest that the application be adjourned. We'll recirculate it, and we'll have two specific line items. As fundamentally wrong as I think that is, I think that probably is the only way to move forward if the committee won't vary that variance.
I think what we'd like to do is we'd like to have it recirculated, so you include all those things that you need to have included for this application. Otherwise, we'll hear the application
No.
that's put before us.
Yeah, no, Mr. Chairman, that, at the end of the day, it may not get me any further. So if you're not prepared to amend it, we'll adjourn it and recirculate it. As disappointing to my client as that's going to be, that's what's going to have to happen. I don't agree with the interpretation the city's bringing to this at the last minute after it's been adjourned already once, where they never raised this issue. But that the city works in wonderful and mysterious ways these days. So
Okay, so that being said, so would you like to have it, because are you going to be able to get these reports and these new variances? in
Mr.
the
Chairman,
application?
this is literally a letter and a check.
Okay,
So we will have this resolved tomorrow morning.
okay,
So as I said, if you're not going to amend it, please adjourn it.
okay, so we could adjourn that to, let me get the date here.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, if it requires recirculation, it should be adjourned sine die.
It does require circulation because of that second item. Okay, so it'll be adjourned, sine die. If that's okay with you, I'll take a vote from the panel right now. All those in favor for adjourning this application, sine die, please raise your hands.
Thank you,
All those
Mr.
opposed?
Thank you,
Barrett is
Mr.
opposed.
Chairman. We'll be back.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hume.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, we just need to pause the hearing for a moment.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, I think it's good to resume the hearing now.
Okay, are we
fixed
back
the
on?
issue. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Now I'd like to deal with those applications that are unopposed. We have two of those. Application number 2 having to do with 2042 Vincent. Mr. Seguin or Ms. Seguin? Chantal Seguin, are you available? Is Ms. Seguin on the line? Yep. Hello, Ms. Seguin. I don't see anybody there. I don't hear anyone there. Ms. Seguin, are you available?
Hello?
Hello?
There you go.
Sorry.
Sorry about
You're
that.
muted.
Yes.
I can't hear you.
Oh,
Oh, you can see us, but you cannot hear us?
Still can't.
okay. Just a sec. Just
Mute. Microphone.
You're still muted.
yes, just a
Test,
sec.
test.
Hello? Hello?
Can you put on the screen the
Yep.
directions on how
Okay.
to get unmuted?
Can you hear us now? Sorry about that.
We're working on it from our end too.
Okay.
Thank you. Sound. That works. Bueno, audio, ¿se pasa?
Oh, we got you now.
Okay, good.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Great.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
So thank you very much for joining us. We have no opposition to your application from either the planning department for the city or other partners. So I'd like to ask the panel for, and I want to ask you, Ms. I'm sorry, I just lost it again.
Say again.
Say again. Sorry
okay.
about that. If you've taken a look at the conditions on this application, and if you agree with those conditions,
Yes, we do.
yes.
Yes.
Great.
condition.
Such as protecting the tree.
Oh, yes,
Yes.
yes. Mhm.
Okay, so that's great. And so with that all, there's no opposition. Is there any opposition from the public? Any questions from the public? No questions from the public. So I would like to ask the panel for approval of this application with all conditions. All those in favor, please raise your hands. This application is approved. Thank you very much, Ms. Seguin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice
Have a good
afternoon.
day.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, now moving on to application number 7. It has to do with 770, Broadview. And I'm looking for Tyler Yakachuk. Tyler Yakachuk, are you available?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon, Mr. Yakachuk. I'd like to make note for the committee that there are no concerns from the city. We've not received any written comments from public bodies in opposition of this application, and there's no registered speakers. And we've received your sign posting. So to that end, I want to ask you if you have reviewed the conditions on this application, and do you agree with them?
Mr. Chair, yes, they have been reviewed and we have agreed to.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to ask the panel for approval of this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Mr. Yakachuk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, so now we'll go in order now and go back up to application number 1. I'm looking for Mr. Segreto.
I'm back.
Welcome back.
Okay.
Okay, so can you give us just a really brief
I-
description of your
yeah.
application as it relates to the concerns the city has?
For sure. I'll have the owner speak on that behalf because he's got a little bit more history behind it than I do.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Can you state your name, sir?
Yeah, Ehsan Foruzande, the owner of the building, the land.
Thank you.
So on February 21st, my arborist sent a report to City of Ottawa to take down 4 trees. It's here and we paid the fee for that, $500 for each tree to take it down. And together with the replacement tree report. And City of Ottawa issued me a building permit on April 12th. So for half of the land for 2 units. So surprisingly, unfortunately, I would say the forestry department stopped me. And although I had the building permit, so it seems that they didn't see my application. That's so weird for me because we have the approval that the forestry department received the application and we paid for that. So technically we had the building permit, we could go ahead and take down the trees and do the construction. So after a while, Nancy Young showed up at my place and she said, oh, she didn't see the application. And I went to the City of Ottawa, talked to Rachel Bray. She is at the planning department. She said, that's not possible because usually we issue a building permit. Before that, we let the forestry department knows about the procedure. So technically they should know about what's happening at my building. So then they came to my side, stop me and try to push the planning department to cancel this one and issue a replacement one for the other side of building. So no, she's asking me just to change the design and that takes too much time and money for me. I'm a home builder and that's the way I'm living. So that I have like bank loan and I don't understand why she didn't come with this argument like 4 months ago before the building permit was issued. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to ask the panel for their questions. Mr. Baltz.
So I understand there've been some discussions already, and what I'd like to know is it possible to change the design of, I think it's mostly the parking area that's in question, in order to preserve the tree number 5 on the report?
Yeah, technically it's possible, but like takes too much time for me. Like it needs at least 2 to 3 months to work on that. We need to engineer to work on that, architect work on that.
I think what the owner is trying to say is that he's willing to work with Nancy Young with respect to saving the tree. We don't have a problem to revise the plans and move forward with that. I think we can do that. And I think before we even get the building permit issued for that part of the semi, because they're front to back semis, you have to understand there's 4 units in total. So the 2 units on 8, I think it's 884, 884 and 886 was the permit that was originally issued. And this is where the tree is. And we're presently building, sorry, let me rephrase that. 880 and 882 is where the tree is. And that permit was reneged. And now we have the permit based at 884 and 886, which is being built. So we do have time to sit down with Nancy and to go over the plan and to see if we can reduce the building so we can protect that tree. But what the owner wants to do is he still wants to move forward with the severance. So then the conditions of severance, because there's a number of conditions of severance that have to be addressed that we can move forward with. We have to get the plan registered, that the deposited, and so on and so forth. And this is what we're asking for. If you can deal with the severance, we will deal with the severance, and then we'll sit down with Ms. Young again and see if we can come to terms in protecting that tree in the back. And may I add, I've had other applications like this in the past, in particular 1250 Trenton, where they were front to back semis again, and there was a tree in front, a city tree in front. In this case here, where the city has asked for $24,000, and my client was prepared to pay for it. And the committee did make a decision on that. They went ahead with the severance, and they gave me the severance on that particular application. I know every application is different, but I've gone through this scenario before. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baltz, anything further?
No, I may have questions for forestry towards the end, but.
Well, we'll get to that after they do their presentation. Thank you. Ms. Wright?
I have one for plan, sorry.
So you wait for planning?
Question for planning.
Okay, so we'll deal with that when we get to planning. Ms. McLean? Okay, Mr. Barrett? Okay, thank you very much. Now, Mr. Segreto, are you familiar with all the requested conditions?
Yes, I've gone over them with the owner. I have.
And do you agree with them?
I have no issues with them. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Okay, so I'd like to ask our planning department to make some comments with respect to this application.
Mr. Chair, there's just one note for the application B00127 and B00129. The frontage should be changed from 1.6 meters to 1.81 meters. This was something that was flagged by the planning department in order for this consent to go ahead. And so that's reflected on the 4R plans submitted on September 8, 2023. With regards to the consent application, the department has no concerns, noting that the long semi will fit nicely in the character of the area, since the area is low-rise residential, single residential homes. However, we understand there's issues with forestry, and we would like to the committee to maintain the condition that speaks regarding potential redesign of the building through talks with forestry.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to ask now the panel, Ms. Wright, you got some comments for planning?
Yeah, so it might be for both of you, planning and forestry. If the consent was approved today, is there a process at building permit time where forestry or planning, mostly forestry, can withhold the permit until a resolution with tree number 5 is achieved?
Thank you for the question. There is not a good process for dealing with this at the building permit stage. We could certainly try to withhold the permit, but it's much more difficult when all the plans are designed already. So this is why the official plan directs us to deal with trees and tree retention at the earliest possible stage, which is now. Yeah, it's best to do it as early as we can to make sure the designs take tree retention into account, and because consents need to account for the official plan as well, which is not the case with building permit.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. McLean?
Ms. Young, how does the tree protection bylaw protect this tree? What authority does it give you to allow the tree to be retained?
The tree protection bylaw, it says which trees are protected essentially, but this tree is directly impacted by the proposed development. And so essentially we need to change the plan for the development in order to retain the tree. We can't prevent development, so that's where this is a delicate position. We need to work together with all parties to make sure that the development accounts for the tree retention.
And just to follow up, can you tell me why the original building permit, which I guess would have impacted the tree, was stopped or rescinded? Was it because of the forestry issue, or?
Yes, I can confirm that once forestry was advised of the building permit application, which was late, and I'm not sure the reasons for that, but it was rescinded and revised to the opposite lot because of the tree issue. And at that time, which was back in May, we had spoken with the owner about providing more time to address this issue and to work on their plans to account for the tree. So that was back in May. Now we're here and we have the exact same plans. So nothing has been done, to my knowledge, at this point to address the tree.
Just one more, the condition about agreeing to explore opportunities for the like, how does that get done? What if they don't agree to revise their plans and you want the plans, like, where does it end up? Does it end up, like, how does it get resolved if it's a condition?
Well, this is a new kind of condition. Ultimately, we would normally say that you must retain this tree, but frankly, we need more information to know that this is possible. So that's why we're leaving it more open to exploration, and we need to have further discussions with the applicant, which is what we were hoping to have before this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barrett? No, okay. Mr. Baltz?
Yeah, so Ms. Young, thank you. So in your opinion, the condition that exists is not sufficient to ensure retention of the tree, is that correct?
It is more open. It's not saying that it absolutely will be retained, but it is ensuring that all options need to be explored. So it is up to the city's satisfaction, I believe. So we need further information. We need advice from the arborist and various planning experts on what can be done here. So I think it's sufficient for our purposes right now. Yes.
I guess as a follow-up for you, Mr. Chair, that the timeline that's set by the province seems to me to be problematical at this point if you're entering into discussions. And the deadline is, is approaching. Is this feasible to conclude discussions now if we were to approve this today?
By the province deadline, do you mean the 2-year application time or which? deadline?
No,
Sorry.
I mean to decide whether it's
Oh, okay.
yeah. Through all of the, we would approve it today. They would hear in 10 days because I assume we would reserve this decision. Then, the building permit has to be issued. All of those things that happen with timelines. Does this fit in or is it going to be not feasible is what I'm trying to get at.
Okay, yes, I think it could. We have 2 years essentially from the time, if it's granted today, if the consent is granted, then I think there's sufficient time. It's just, I don't know the building schedule or anything like that, but it should be sufficient, I believe.
Anything further? No, okay. I'm going to ask the public now. Is there anybody from the public that would like to make some comments on this application or some questions for the applicant or the planning department? Okay, we have no interest by the public right now, so we will now let you know that we will be reserving our decision today, Mr. Segreto, and we will have an answer back to you in writing within 10 days.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so the next application we'll be hearing has to do with 8605 Campeau Drive. And I'm looking for Alex Turner and Ann Curtis. Mr. Turner, are you available?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much.
Okay, there we are.
So I would like to ask you if you could give us a very brief description of your application today, sir.
Certainly. Could I ask that the second page in the file that I sent to the committee be put up? I think it will help. Great. So this is a recent aerial photo of the area in question, overlaid by the parcel boundaries and also by our reference plan, which we have submitted with this application. I guess today, the Canada West Centre Inc., who I represent, is the owner of parts 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, and 8 on this plan. And we have entered into a land lease with tenant Suncor Energy, who has a site plan in process with the city to put a gas station, car wash, and restaurant on most of that site. Parts 4 and 5 are owned by Riocan and Tanger, who are also the owners of the large parcel to the east called Tanger Outlets. As you can see, there is an access into Tanger Outlets that crosses parts 2 and 5. Our tenant will also be using that access once they are open. Currently, we have an easement over part 5, which is owned by Riocan and Tanger. And Riocan and Tanger want to own their entire entrance. So we have agreed to sell them parts 2 and 3, which is the triangle further south on our land. And it's for that reason that we have come here to get consent to convey those lands to Riocan and Tanger, reserving an easement over part 2 for access, and also consent for joint use and maintenance agreement to regulate operation of the access.
Thank you very much. Any comments from the panel? Ms. McLean?
I thought there was some, thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought there was some discussion on the joint use and maintenance agreement. Has that been satisfied between the two, between the city and Taggart?
Well, we have some comments, I guess, and maybe a request with regard to these condition 2 in the planning report. And I'm here with my solicitor, Ann Curtis, who will speak to that.
Yes, hello. We are happy with all the other conditions. There will be a consolidation because the lands have the same estate qualifier, so that is good. The condition with respect to a joint use and maintenance agreement is not necessary for this one because we provided the joint use and maintenance agreement to the committee with the application and are requesting a consent for it today. I redrafted a condition that would be acceptable to us, that the joint use and maintenance agreement, we would give a solicitor's undertaking that it would be registered immediately after the transfer. And I believe Alex provided that to the committee and to the city yesterday. We just received the city's report on Friday, so there wasn't much time to sort all this out. I don't know
Samantha
who is there from the city that received this and can speak to it.
I sent it to Sarah and Samantha.
Okay, thank you. Anything further, Ms. McLean?
No, just the plan. I'd like to hear from planning on.
Okay.
response.
We'll get that when planning has a response to the. Mr. Baltz?
Just a quick question. You are going to share that same driveway to access the planned new development, so it will split off from there. Or is there a new driveway planned?
It's the same driveway. There will just be an opening from the new development into that driveway, allowing both parties to use the access.
And that's the reason for the Juma. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Wright?
No.
Mr. Barrett? No? Okay, great. Thank you. I'd like now to proceed to ask the public if they've got any comments or questions for the applicant or planning.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'd like to speak to just the request for the alteration to condition, if that's all right, if we have no one from the public.
Go ahead.
All right, so we received the request to alter the condition late yesterday afternoon, and it's my position for the city that we would not like to change that condition from our wording. I've consulted with legal services on the matter, and the effect of the wording that the applicant has proposed would essentially be to submit the Juma to the committee, and then it would be registered on title, but there's no review by legal services in that, which is what is being kind of stipulated by that request. And because the committee doesn't have legal counsel of their own to review that agreement, there's kind of no point to kind of just sending it to the committee for sign off. The reason why the city's legal services reviews Jumas is to ensure that one, there's no typos or things that are kind of wrong in the agreement. The city doesn't get involved in the actual content in terms of the structure regarding, what's being said or what's being agreed to in terms of that. But they also do look to make sure that there's no kind of liability issues for the city. I'm not saying per se with this application, but they review to see if there's nothing binding for the city. The city shall do that because the Juma doesn't have the authority to do that. So it's a protection for the city as if the city is signing off on a severance, and then understanding that if the Juma is part of that it's protection for future landowners to ensure that everything is kind of correct in that manner. That is why that condition is being requested. And I'll note that yes, the draft Juma was submitted with the application. However, I'll note it wasn't registered, at least the copy that was reviewed with it. And that's the reason for the condition. It's relatively straightforward. Typically legal services doesn't have substantive comments on a Juma, as I said, since they're not really speaking to the structure. So in my opinion, requiring this condition isn't going to be onerous on for the applicant or in terms of the approval process.
Okay, thank you.
We have just had another series of easements where we obtained the consent of the committee with the condition that legal services look at it, exactly the same wording as being presented with this one. Now, in that case, the Jumas had not been drafted yet. They were drafted and they were submitted to legal services last May. We received, after follow-ups, the unbelievable follow-ups, until I was retained to, on a daily basis, contact legal services for their waiver of that condition. We received it yesterday, September the 18th. That's how long it took for them to, and I don't know whether they're checking the typo or whatever. In this case, it's quite different. We submitted the Juma with our application. So legal services could have looked at it in that period. And the condition that I would accept and reworded is that the agreement would be in the same form as was submitted with the application.
Thank you. So I don't want to go back and forth between the parties. I would like now to go to the panel, ask the panel if you've got some questions for planning. Mr. Bultz?
But may I just ask one thing? Did the committee submit to the panel a copy of the revised condition that we would be agreeable to? Do you have it?
Yes, it's been read. Yep. Mr. Bultz, you have any questions for planning?
Yeah, I guess just a quick clarification, which is that the key is that legal services has not yet seen the Juma and therefore it needs to be seen by them before it can be acceptable to the city. Is that correct? There's no other issues.
So for Mr. Chair, so that's correct. So legal, they will review the Juma based on the lapse date for the consent approval. They don't review it based on the submission date. So it's my understanding that they haven't looked at it yet. That's usually how it goes after the consent is approved, and then it will be submitted by the applicant to help clear the condition.
Thank you. Ms. McLean, any comments or questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering why the city has to be party to this Juma. And then second, because it's between private companies. And secondly, I'm wondering if we amended the application where it says the owner requires the consent of the committee for a lot line adjustment and grant of easement, if we added in there and a joint use agreement, and in the standard condition that the committee imposes that the applicants submit the E-reg documents for the conveyance, the grant of right-of-way, and we add in joint use agreement, whether we need a separate condition at all. So I'm just going to leave that to both planning and to Ms. Curtis.
Thank you.
Yes, that certainly would be satisfactory to us, and that makes all sorts of good sense, because you're right, the content of that Juma has been a subject of negotiations between two experienced solicitors, and it is attached as a schedule to the agreement of purchase and sale for these lands. And yes, that would be fine.
Thank you. Mr. Barrett, any questions? That's right, no questions?
Just
Okay,
maybe we could hear back from planning on that.
sure.
suggestion.
Yes. So
Planning
Mr.
Committee.
Chair,
Yep.
so regards to Member McLean's question about why is the city involved in the Juma at all if it's between private landowners. So as I mentioned earlier, that it's when the city legal services is reviewing it, they're not really looking at the structure, the content in terms of what is actually being agreed to with the owner. It's really to ensure that there's, well, one, it's correct in terms of language, there's no typos or errors, and then as also it's about the protecting liability for city in terms of if there's anything in there that would bind the city in other way, in terms of, for example, the city shall do this, the city shall do that, because that's the amount of time they authority to do that. So it's important that the city legal services has the opportunity to review it. And it's also for the protection of future owners, not just the city, in terms of making sure this agreement looks okay and has been reviewed. It's not like, obviously I'm not questioning the expertise of the solicitors before us today, but it is kind of, if the city is consenting to this severance, that and understand there's a JUMA in place that's with it, that's kind of the responsibility that they're taking in that case. And I think that I would be opposed to including the JUMA as part of the other documents, and because I believe that would have the same effect of just having the JUMA be sent to the committee and not to skipping the review from legal services. That's my concern, and I would strongly advocate for not removing that condition for that reason.
Legal services does not review every JUMA that is sent to the registry office. It really has nothing to do with the severance application.
Thank you, Ms.
Also, the other thing, apparently, in our numerous follow-ups, I had a conversation with one of the lawyers, and apparently the Committee of Adjustment has had so many applications since, I guess, the pandemic is over, and they have been told to treat these JUMA conditions in order, and not to pick and choose which ones are more important or whatever. And that really is not sustainable to take as long as they took to look at ours, which they yesterday approved the condition without any amendment, with no problems with 5 of those JUMAs. And I think really when everybody is so busy, that when you get a JUMA that's already prepared and finalized, and we're asking for the consent of the committee for it, surely that would be the time, if you wanted to speak to legal services and have them look at it, that should be part of the city's planning report, that you've done that. And this was filed in July the 21st of this year, so there would have been plenty of time if you wanted them to check the typos or whatever to do that. But I don't think it's really, I think as the panel member said, it really isn't properly part of a consent application for legal services to start looking too closely at these, any more that they don't approve any other JUMA that is filed outside of the Committee of Adjustments processes.
Thank you, Ms. Curtis. Thank you, Mr. Turner. So we will be reserving judgment today on this application, and we will be sending you a written confirmation of our decision within 10 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's. Now we're moving on to application number 5, having to do with 49 Loch Isle Road. I'm looking for Arjen Soor, Adam Thompson, Mark Elliott. State your name, please.
Arjen Soor.
Good afternoon. Now, I want to note for the committee that there are no concerns by planning. RVCA does have some concerns, so I'll be directing my comments or ask RVCA to make some comments. Mr. Lalonde, could you tell us a little bit about the issue?
Yeah, if I may, through the chair. I believe the issues have been resolved. The Conservation Authority did not have any objections to the application, but when we were reviewing the drawings that were submitted to us, noticed a bit of a discrepancy in terms of the normal high water mark. There is a longer history related to that number, and it's evolved through when the applicant started the process with us and to submitting the application. Then, long story short, is the drawings that we had referenced an old number. And I just wanted to make sure that it was clear to the Committee of Adjustment that the zoning bylaw number that's being applied is accurate. So that was the concern. So it wasn't a problem with the property, it was just making sure that there wouldn't be a deficiency or discrepancy with the variance that would follow up to the building code process. The application has received approval from our office for a permit, but the drawings have shifted slightly, so they would need to be amended through our office, and that's referenced in our comments. But I don't see there being an issue with that amendment being approved from a conservation authority's perspective. So really, in short, there's no objections at this point, and through the updated drawings that the applicants have provided me late yesterday, I think we're happy with the submission that's provided to the committee on the floor right now.
Great, thanks, Mr. Lalonde. Do you have any comments or questions, Mr. Barrett? Or, okay, Ms. Wright?
So I read somewhere in the documentation that was given to us that you object to condition number 2.
Correct.
Can you just elaborate on why and maybe what that condition is?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, I'll just read the condition and then I'll outline why we object to that condition. So the condition is to prepare and submit a scoped EIS prepared by the applicant landowner, incorporating a planting plan into the EIS, showing a renaturalization of the landscape between the development and the water's edge, accomplished through vegetation plantings to the satisfaction of the development review manager of the West Branch within planning, real estate, and economic development department or his designate. And then it goes on to recommend specific, or rather that specific mitigation measures or other requirements the owner will enter into a development agreement. And so our opposition is mainly centered on the fact that, firstly, a building permit has already been issued for this development. And the revisions to that building permit are for the amendment to the deck. We also think that an EIS wouldn't really make sense to be required. A TIR has already been prepared, and that TIR documents the existing trees that are on the site. All of those documented trees are going to be retained and aren't impacted by the development. And then in terms of other vegetation on the site, there's a rear yard that has sod and grass, and it's pretty much the vegetation that's on the site. The deck is also proposed in an area where there already is an existing deck. So most of the new deck is going to be where the existing deck is, where there's an existing retaining wall, and in an area where there's gravel sort of stone used for landscaping. So it's not going to really affect any actual landscaping on the property to have this deck. And I do also want to say that, in terms of the EIS requirements for a minor EIS or a scoped EIS, there is flexibility there for the requirement of an EIS for a minor development proposal for single detached dwellings, being one of those that are considered a minor development proposal. This is a deck to a single detached dwelling, and I do think that that fits that requirement and would merit some flexibility in that regard, to not have to require a full environmental study.
I'm just trying to figure out how to word my question. I guess, how did the condition come up? The whole concern about having an EIS, and is possibly RVCA aware of their request for an EIS? And are you aware of maybe a request to renaturalize the property?
Mr. Chair, to respond to Madam Wright's question, I just want to address first that yes, there is a building permit issue for work that was not on the portion of the deck that goes beyond the watermark. So now we're dealing with a new drawing that goes above the required setback. So that's why we're talking about asking for this scope DIS. The reasons for this is to sort of assess the impact. It's not very detailed or onerous. It's something that the landowner can provide. And for the appropriateness, I will defer to my colleague, Mark Elliott, who is the environmental planner, and he can speak to the reason for this requirement.
Mr. Elliott?
Hi, Ivan. Thank you for having me today. Am I coming through clear okay? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. So the main concern about this particular development is the idea that the deck actually increases the footprint of the impermeable surface area within the protected setback. And specifically, the concern isn't about the removal of vegetation. It's about how the increase in the impermeable surface area of the setback increases the amount of runoff and stormwater, which increases the erosion potential, which can harm the riverside area. Now, specifically, the applicants brought up that there's no vegetation being removed, but the crushed stone landscaping that will be replaced by the deck still functions as a means of slowing down and infiltrating water. And by replacing that with the impermeable surface of a deck, you're still causing harm to the environment. And the EIS, and specifically the planting plan, is the mechanism that the city uses to mitigate those harms.
Thank you. Anything further, Ms. Reddy?
No, that's fine. Thanks.
Okay. Ms. McLean, have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wondered whether this condition can be addressed at building permit time. Because typically we don't impose a lot of conditions on minor variance applications.
I don't believe we would be able to build and permit stage, and you're correct that we don't impose a lot of conditions on applications. For permission applications, the Planning Act does provide the authority to the committee to impose conditions. But again, at building permit, we might not be able to review this planting plan. Therefore, we're asking at this stage to have that condition.
The difficulty is it's not like a consent where there's a 2-year period. The difficulty with a minor variance is that once the appeal period is up, the minor variance is released. And then how is that condition met? So I'm just going to leave that with you at that time, because that's sort of a problem that arises when we attach conditions to minor variances. I have a question for the applicant. Given that this is a permission application, how is the existing deck established as a legal non-conforming structure?
So to help answer that question, I'd like to have the site plan put up if you could. So that's slide 4 of our presentation. But basically, what's currently there is a deck that has a legally non-conforming setback from the normal high water mark. By increasing the extent, and that increases 1.58 meters, by increasing that extent of that decks with respect to the setback from the high water mark, we would require a permission application to expand that legally non-conforming use. And so I don't know if that sort of kind of answers your question. This site plan just sort of shows the extents of the deck that we're talking about, and the extents of the structures. And so you can see there that the deck and which is proposed on the right, and the deck that's existing on the left, and the retaining wall that's existing on the left, constitutes about 11 square meters in extra area. But the encroachment overall of elements is 0.5 meters less. So while we're encroaching more with the deck than the existing deck, the overall elements on the property do encroach further back. So we do improve that with the provision of this deck.
It's my understanding that the deck has to be lawfully there on a day a bylaw was passed, which then makes it legally non-conforming. So can you give me some dates then when the deck was built, and what bylaw and when was it passed that made the deck legally non-conforming?
Through Mr. Chair, I don't know if that analysis has been completed. Certainly it is a deck that's the existing deck has been there. Certainly, I think my understanding is since before at least 2008 with the current zoning bylaw. So I don't think there would be any doubt that it would be legally non-conforming. I will note it as well. This is a permission application. We're dealing with the replacement of a deck. and that as noted, you know, a building permit has been issued for a slightly smaller structure, but it has been issued that the city does not require any EIS for generally for a single family dwelling. And so what we're dealing with really is just a simple permission application for the replacement of the deck.
I think I understand that, but it's whether this is a minor variance application or a permission application. You've chosen to file it as a permission application, and under 45(2), it says that the committee can permit the enlargement of the building or structure where it was lawfully used for a purpose prohibited by the bylaw on the day the bylaw was passed. So I'm just looking for the record to get that information on. So the deck had to be there, and then there was a bylaw that passed that prohibited the deck. So that's the information I think that's missing in order for us to consider it as a permission application. And I don't know if planning has any information on when that deck was constructed. Was it there lawfully with a building permit? And then somewhere along the line, this distance from a watermark came into effect that made it legally non-conforming. But I think we're missing that type of information in order to entertain it as a permission application.
So yeah, can you help with this?
Sorry, I don't have any information at this time.
Did you review that before with this application?
We wouldn't, I wouldn't be able to, I believe, to find the original plans. Whether or not they had the deck or not, we can find when there was a building permit application. And I can look that up and let you know.
Okay.
But at this time,
Mr. Baltz, please.
Just to follow up on that, my understanding is usually when establishing a non-conforming right, there's an affidavit that's filed. Is that still the practice? And is there an affidavit on file confirming the non-conforming right? Because that's usually where that information is given, is it not?
Sure.
So for the applicants, so you're asserting that the 2008 bylaw is the cutoff here. Do you know what the previous bylaw said about 30-meter setbacks, or was it different? Was the deck conforming in 2007?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe we're in the former municipality of Nepean. Going back to my memory, I believe the old Nepean bylaw would have also had those setbacks. The 30-meter setback has been a pretty standard practice since certainly before 2008, the 2008 zoning bylaw.
So then to establish a non-conforming right, you have to go back before the first bylaw that had that 30-meter setback in it and be able to show that the deck existed at that time. So I'm wondering with Ms. McLean here, whether this is actually should be minor variance if we don't have before us some evidence that there actually is a non-conforming right to expand.
Mr. Chair, to go back and I'm not 100% sure what the age of the structure is. Whether or not there are even records that go back that far. My recent experiences with decks and legal non-conforming setbacks to water courses, occasionally if there's historical photos or something like that, we've been able to use that. But to the best of my knowledge, we don't have that information. We can. What I wonder is whether if this is something that the committee does require, whether we should be putting this matter off and to see if we can determine that historical element to it.
Is the owner present? Is he nearby? David Barron?
No, unfortunately, he wasn't able to attend today.
Okay. Now, he would know when that deck was built.
I'm not sure whether Mr. Barron has been the owner since the
Mr.
deck was
Chair,
built.
sorry, excuse me, Mr. Barron is online, so we
great.
could bring him into the hearing.
Great. Mr. Barron, are you available?
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Barron. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, great. I'm not
So
yet.
a couple of members here would like to know when this deck was on the building. When did it get built?
So the house was built, so I bought it in the last 2 years. So I'm a relatively new owner. And the house was built in 83.
1983?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I believe the deck has been on there since the beginning, or very close to it. Yeah.
If we needed to, we could check Geo Ottawa. Can you go back and check Geo Ottawa? Okay.
I think what we need to know is what bylaw was passed that then didn't permit this deck that was there. And I think, Mr. Thompson, you alluded to the fact that the water course setback's been in the bylaw for a long time. So I'm not sure if this application is framed as being a permission or whether or not it's a minor variance. So that's a question I think that's out there. And maybe an adjournment to allow you to look into that and bring us the information. Just to confirm that it isn't a permission application would be the right step.
Mr. Chair, can I ask to the RVCA, do you know when the 30-meter setbacks came into force on this river?
If I may, through the chair, the Conservation Authority has a different process for legal non-conforming uses and whether it's legally established or not in terms of how we apply alterations. So short answer, no, we don't have the answer to that. It looks like there's been activity on the property going back quite a way, so I'm not surprised. The overall scope from our approval process, different from the Committee of Adjustment under the Planning Act, Section 45. So there wouldn't be an issue from a legal non-conforming aspect for the permits that we would issue. That's why the previous permit was issued, and we'd have no issue amending that permit to accommodate this development. So unfortunately, I can't be helpful in the question that's asked. But I can at least give you some assurance, and the process isn't going to stumble up other approvals from our end.
Anything further from the panel? No? Okay, great. All right, I guess we need to ask the public if they have any questions or comments. Anyone from the public have any questions? No questions or comments? We will be reserving judgment today, and you'll find out in about 10 days on whether or not we on the result and outcome of this application. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
In terms of the discussion about adjournment, that was not.
No, that's not on.
Okay.
Well, I think I offered it to the applicant, so.
Sure. Do you want to use that?
Yes, we would.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the panel, all in agreement to adjourn this application? Yes. When is the next opportunity do we have for this application to come back?
There's a hearing on October 3rd, Mr. Chair, or October 17th.
Which would you prefer, Mr. Thompson?
October 3rd would be enough time.
Okay, perfect. So this application is adjourned till October the 3rd. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Heather. Okay, I believe that ends today's.
No, Mr. Chair, there's one more application
one more?
for 515 Supernova.
Yes, okay. It's the Supernova application, 515 Supernova Street, Mr. Patrick Buston. And are you available, Mr. Buston?
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Buston.
Just getting my video going. There we go.
There you are. Hi. So we have one member of the public that has expressed a concern. And I wonder if you could just give us a brief explanation as it relates to the concern by Mr. Alum, a neighbor in the neighborhood.
Yeah, so the concern I got this morning was that the reduction of rear yard setback and the addition that would be built a little bit beyond the existing setback would provide a significant effect on their privacy. That was the wording of their concern.
Okay. Do you know where Mr. Alum lives?
I do not. I assume it's the property immediately on the rear side, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Mr. Alum, are you available?
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Yes, I am.
Good. Can you please explain to us your concerns about this application?
So I am the back neighborhood at 376 Big Dipper Street.
What's the address again, sir, please?
37 Big Dipper.
Okay. 37 Big Dipper.
376.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And my only concern that I shared was the if they are making the deck above the ground level and reducing the rear setback will affect our privacy. That's the only concern I have, and that's I would like you to consider that in the making decision.
And how is it going to affect your privacy, sir?
So because we share the rear yard and we only have the fence, that's what we built the fence for. So if they are coming and raising their deck, that means that my whole rear yard will be visible.
Say that again. Sorry, the last bit, sir.
I'm sorry. So like they're making the deck above the ground level by 2 and 5 inches and coming near to closer to the rear fence. That means that my yard will be visible to them.
Okay. This one's happening here. So, all right. So there are 4 conditions that must be met for a minor variance. Are you familiar with those 4 conditions, sir?
No, I do not.
Okay, so I'll read them off for you. So is it desirable, appropriate for development use of the land or building? Does it maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan, excuse me? Maintains the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, and it's minor. So you have to address the concerns you have in relation to those 4 items. Can you do that, sir?
Okay. I mean, I like I said, my only concern was that if that's not in that concerns or the conditions, then I have no problem.
Okay. Well, I would like to ask the panel for comments or questions to the applicant first. Miss Wright.
Yeah, just to clarify to the applicant, the height of the deck is, I believe, 2 foot 5 inches off above grade.
Yes, that's correct. Give or take an inch, perhaps, but that's the minimum that we have.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Mr. Barrett.
Just a question of fencing. What is the current fencing in the rear yard?
So when we first did our site assessment, there was no fencing there, but once the signage was posted, we saw that it was a typical PVC fencing. It was 7 feet high, I believe, for your typical yard separation fencing.
Ms. McLean?
So there is an existing 7 foot high fence there? You didn't come through very clearly, so.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yes, there is a. I believe it's 7 feet high, just because I've seen those typical PVC fences erected between properties before. It wasn't there during our initial site measure, but it was erected at some point recently. When we posted a sign, it was in place.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Baltz.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So if you sit on the proposed deck at 2 feet above the ground, is there any sight line into the yard behind?
Not significantly. Once this concern was brought up, I was doing a bit of checking on the measurement. The floor height is currently, or rather, when you're standing at floor level, for an average height person, our client isn't that tall, under 6 feet. You can see about 7 or 8 inches above the top of that fence. Now that's an existing sight line, regardless of this addition being put in, as there are windows facing the rear of the existing building. At the distance that the addition, the nearest distance that the addition would be facing the fence, I did some calculations based on the nearest face of the rear neighboring lot from Ottawa. You couldn't actually see any of the actual backyard. You would see about 5 feet up of the building face of the rear yard, and from the existing house, you probably see about 6 feet up, maybe a bit less. It's not a significant change.
And are you adding significant amount of window space on the rear of this new addition? Or?
No, we have 2 6-foot by 4.5 feet windows being put on this back face, but there was already a double garden door that had full glazing, plus 2 full height glazing windows in the back, as well as a protrusion of the right side of the building in the garage that had windows on that, which extends further than the face of the building that we're adding the addition to. So we're not really increasing the amount of glazing. It's just the proximity has been reduced slightly.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So, Mr. Buston, so a 2.5 foot increase in height from grade is the distance of the deck.
Yes, and that's in line with the first floor.
Okay, and so then you've got a 7-foot fence. You take 2.5 feet off of that, you're down to 5.5 feet. Can you see the grass if you're sitting on the deck?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and now I'd like to ask the panel if they have any questions for the Mr. Alam. Mr. Barrett? That's right, no? Mr. Baltz?
I would just ask through you, Mr. Chair, whether now that the details of the deck and fencing have been clarified, whether there is still a concern.
Mr. Allen, do you still have a concern?
Yes, I'm here. With all those conditions and that are now in light, I may not have a concern. No, that's fine.
Okay, thank you very much. So we will now adjourn. Sorry, we're going to reserve judgment on this application today. And in 10 days, you'll find out the results of our deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
I believe that now concludes today's hearing. Thank you very